Well, today's topic is the money talk. Sometimes we beat around the bush and we call it prosperity or abundance because actually those terms do apply to things beyond money, but every now and then it's nice to be clear about what we're talking about. Money is, in metaphysical terms, money is looked at as a facilitating energy. You might say, well, what's that? Well, air is a facilitating energy. It's something that we need it in order to breathe, in order to survive physically. And the difference between air and money is that money is quantified, it's measured by its very nature, and it's tangible in a sense that air maybe isn't. You know, when you're running out of air, you know it, but you can't really predict it all the time, right? I used to scuba dive, and you know, you'd have about 1,000 psi's of air, and you kind of knew how long that would last at different depths, and you'd pay attention to your breathing to make sure you weren't breathing too quickly, you know, because you wanted to be able to extend the dive, and you wanted to be able to get back to the surface, which was part of the deal, you know. That, it was always a good idea to return to the surface from a dive. So the rest of the time you might take air for granted, but when you have it's in a tank on your back and you're 100 feet underwater, you pay attention to that facilitating energy. We live in a culture that, like it or not, is economically driven. I mean, there's you really can't get through a day without having some contact with money. Whether you're looking at your bank account or you're paying a mortgage, or you're paying rent, you're paying car payments, you're buying things, and there's all kinds of exchange of this particular facilitating energy. And as a facilitating energy, what it means is it's something that can facilitate the quality of your experience. And that's its real value. Having money for itself is like, I got 5 rooms full of air. Well, what's the value of that? If I had 5 rooms full of money, you say, well, it's worth something. But if I don't do anything with it, it's not facilitating anything. And, if you just put money in a room, you know what happens to it? It loses value. So one quality of money we can look at, and this is true anywhere you go in the world, is if money doesn't flow, if it doesn't move, it loses value. So one of the aspects of the nature of money is that it's best when it moves. And when you're investing money, it can gain. If you put it under your mattress or just leave it in a room, it loses value. A lot of people don't think that money is spiritual. When ministers get together, we talk about stuff, about what it's like to be a minister and our issues, and money always comes up, whether it's on our email list or when we get together at a conference or we're having lunch, When another minister says, how's it going, they mean, how's the money? And being spiritual, we don't want to talk about it directly often, but sometimes we do, Well, everything's fine. It's all a consciousness of love and everything, Yeah. Of course, and I actually had this conversation. I won't say with who, with the minister. How's it going? Everything's going great. There's a tremendous consciousness, and oh, by the way, we're losing our building. See, there wasn't enough money coming in to maintain it. And yet everything's going fine. Well, in a sense, everything is going fine. And I said to him, well, did you want to maintain your building? Well, yeah, that would have been nice, because now we don't know where we're going to go. I said, well, then everything isn't fine, is it? I mean, ultimately, everything's fine all the time, right? But in what's in front of me, do you ever have too much month at the end of the money? You ever had that experience, where there's still bills there and the bank account's gone empty? So we all know what it's like, I think, most of us anyway, to maybe have some money struggles. And it's kind of interesting how we project this out. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to, because we're very often not very open about it. It's interesting in the political realm right now, it's like Mitt Romney, who's running for president. He's very wealthy, and people say, God, look how wealthy he is. He makes 20 times what the average American does. I'd like to have a leader that has a prosperity consciousness. I'm not saying I agree with everything he says or anything like that, but do we want somebody in the White House that maybe has to run Amway meetings in the evening to make ends meet? I think you can anticipate that anybody getting to that level in the political world probably has a consciousness of being able to take care of themselves, at least financially. And yet it seemed like, well, some people are saying, well, I don't want that. Really? You know. We have some interesting ideas about money. You know, there's that whole thing about before a rich man can get into heaven, a camel will go through the eye of a needle. Now, in a modern context, you say, well, there ain't any rich people getting into heaven because I've seen a camel and I've seen a needle. And you're not getting a camel through the eye of a needle unless you take the camel down to the molecular level. Right? But you know what the eye of the needle was? It was an opening in the wall, in a walled city, where in order to get the camel in, it was it was just a short door. In order to get the camel in, you had to take all the stuff off the camel, and the camel had to go through on its knees. And that was a way of checking, like it was like the customs department. So they had to see what was on the camel. So everything had to be taken off the camel outside the walls where it could be inspected. The camel would crawl through, and then you'd take the stuff through and load it back up. So it wasn't impossible for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. It was routine. You see? So you could say from that standpoint, there could be a lot of rich people in heaven, wherever heaven is. We haven't figured that out either. We don't believe in heaven either, so what are we going to do with that, right? My teacher, Dr. Bill, would say, you know, money doesn't make you more spiritual. It doesn't really make you happier. The best that can be said, if you're rich, is that you'll suffer in comfort. Because the truth is, if you have a poverty conscience, you can have a poverty consciousness and have a lot of money. And people, you can tell someone that has a lot of money that has a poverty consciousness because they're always afraid of losing their money. So they spend a lot of time worrying about it. So we have all these different kinds of energies around it. You know, so what I wanted to do today was, in a fairly brief process, take you through some ideas about money, and then when you leave, we're going to have a little handout for you so that it has all the stuff, and it's really some steps to developing a prosperity consciousness or strengthening one that you may already have. And a prosperity consciousness I would simply define as, I have enough to spare and enough to share of whatever it is, of my time, of my energy, of my love, of my money, of whatever it may be. I'm not worried about it, so I have to hoard it. You know, you can see yourself as too busy and think you have to hoard your time and and people say, hey, can I have a minute? No, I'm sorry, I've got so much on my schedule. You know, you can try to hoard your time. Wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to worry about that? You just say, sure, I got a minute, or I can make a minute, or we'll do something, you know? When you see time as finite, as too limited, you tend to hoard it. If you see time as, I've got all the time in the world, then you're able to be free with it. The same with money. If I think I don't have enough money, I'll tend to hoard it. I'll tend to worry about it. I'll tend to, look at everything and really, get the best deal. I spend 3 or 4 hours online saving 25 cents on an item and free shipping. So what's your time worth? 25 cents every 3 hours. You think about that? I remember my aunt was kind of a miserly woman, and she would she'd drive across town to save 10 cents on a roll of toilet paper. That was the family joke, Spend 30 cents in gas. Back then gas was cheap. But you know what that consciousness is? How much time do you spend saving? And you say, look at the deal I got. And that's true, but how much of your time did you give up for that? Is there no value in your time? And I find that people that don't see their time as valuable often have trouble with money. Kind of an interesting connection. So let's look at a couple of these ideas. Oh, I was going to clip that. That's a picture of money if you haven't seen one. That's actually a stack of $100 bills, and they're real. So if Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill. Okay? Dr. Holmes said prosperity is inevitable if a person's mind is right. Nothing can stop it. Healing is inevitable if a person is in harmony with life. There is nothing that can stop it. It's a law. Now, why would he say that? I think he would say that because, for most people, they think of prosperity as an exception. They think of good health as an exception. It's something, well, you have to be really special to have prosperity. It's not just an everyday occurrence. But see, in a metaphysical teaching, the idea would be that health is the normal state. Illness is abnormal. To have an abundance or be prosperous is the normal state. To be in lack would be abnormal. In fact, he says, it's inevitable if your mind is right. Now, here's where people, this is a real interesting little tweak here, because, if you watch The Secret and all this, the same message, right? So what I'll do, let's say I don't feel like I'm prosperous. Let's say I often have too much month at the end of the money. In fact, I worry about money a lot. And I look at people that don't worry about money, and I just cannot fathom how they got there. So you make assumptions. Well, maybe they inherited it, or maybe they lucked out, or maybe they won the lottery, or whatever it would be. Right? And then I read a statement like that. It says, prosperity is inevitable if my mind is right. Well, I don't have inevitable prosperity. My mind must not be right. What's wrong with me? I knew something was wrong with me. I always suspected it. So this gives you a chance to wallow in self-pity. You ever wallow in self-pity? Right? Woe is me? Ain't it awful? Let me tell you about my problems, right? When we talk about the martyr kit, where you have a piece of Velcro here and a piece here, and you just go. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen, right? Let me tell you about my poverty. And then I would say, if that happens to you, pay attention to your conversations with other people. How many of your conversations are based on lack? Let me tell you what I don't have. Well, let me tell you what I don't have. Let me tell you how stressed out I am. Well, you think you're stressed out. Let me tell you how stressed out I am. Well, let's be more positive. And then the person will look at you like, well, I got nothing to add to that. Why would we want to be positive? The world, you see what we do? We get into these mindsets and it kind of spirals down. And then what happens when you see someone that isn't afflicted by that mindset, that's doing well, you resent them. Pay attention to your resentments, because we tend to resent people the most who are doing something that we know we could be doing if we were living our life correctly. Prosperity is inevitable if a person's mind is right. The power in that statement is, if I'm not experiencing prosperity, my mind isn't right, and the power is I have the power to make it right. By thinking correctly. By thinking based on what is true under the law, rather than the assumptions I've made based on listening to people who really don't know. If you want to be wealthy, it's a good idea to hang around with some wealthy people. Just to see how they think. They might rub off on you a little bit because you might be influenced by that kind of thought. If you want to be successful, you hang around with successful people. Now, I don't know any successful people. Where do they hang out? Well, obviously not where you are, so you need to go somewhere else. So here are some steps. And the first step is we pray and affirm. In other words, we change our mind. Okay, so we pray and affirm to create the internal initial link in the chain. Get my consciousness moving in a different direction. If I'm not happy with what's showing up and the way it's showing up, then I need to get my consciousness moving in a different direction. How do I do that? Well, the only causative element I have access to is my own thought. If I keep thinking the way I'm thinking, my life's going to keep looking the way it looks. If I'm not happy with that, that's a problem. So if I'd like to have more of anything in my life, I need to think toward that. Does that make sense? Okay, I need to stop affirming what is and start affirming what I desire. Okay? Treatment is a reprogramming of my personal worth. When we talk about treatment or affirmative prayer, that's really what it is, because the external reality of your life, your external experience of your life always matches what you think you deserve in any area of your life. In fact, many of us use our mind power, our ability to generate things in our lives, to generate stuff we don't want. So we can prove that we don't deserve what we want. What better way to prove you don't deserve what you think you can't have than by having what you don't want? You're geniuses. I'm serious. If there's something in your life you don't want, it's because you brought it in, because at some level you do want it. At a subconscious level. There's nothing in your life that isn't there by some subconscious need, which can really be depressing. But it's also empowering. So this problem I have of too much month at the end of the money isn't there because I don't want it. It's there because at some level I've chosen it. And I can choose something else. A lot of people think your self-worth equals your net worth. And we look at our money or amount of money we have or don't have, and we then mirror that back and say, well, what are you worth? Well, not much. Okay, so I'm here to tell you, no. We even have a visual aid. No. Your self-worth, in reality, is that you're magnificent beyond measure. Deal with that. What you have decided your self-worth is may be something else. And if I decide my self-worth is less than it is, then it becomes that to me. It becomes that to me. There's the old story in Asia of the Golden Buddha, which we saw in the one movie that we had here a few weeks ago. But anyway, it's basically real quick story. There was a Golden Buddha, and the monks would take care of it and everything, and then they were being invaded, and they knew the invaders would take the gold. So they covered the Golden Buddha in, like, terracotta. And when the invaders came through, they saw this terracotta Buddha, and they said, that's not worth anything, and they passed it by. And then years later, centuries later, the monks had come back, but the monks that came back were a couple of generations later, and they didn't know that the gold Buddha had been covered up. So they came back, and there was this terracotta Buddha. It was like, yeah, okay. They weren't that impressed with it. It wasn't a big deal. And then one day, some monk was out praying in front of the Buddha, and, terracotta gets old, and it was cracked, and he looked through the crack, and there's something shiny. And he went up and chipped off a piece of the terracotta, and it was gold there. And they came out and they chipped it all away, and they found the gold again. The Buddha was always golden. But the belief was that it wasn't because of appearances. So the story, that story is not about a Buddha, it's about you. Many of us have covered ourselves in terracotta in our own minds because as we grew up, that's what we were taught to do. I know in my family, nobody wanted you to have a really good opinion of yourself. God forbid you be stuck up or be a snob. So you're covering yourself with terracotta, and you don't know you're doing it, so when you become an adult, you just keep, it's still there. When really, it's all gold. And we look at people that know that it's all gold, and if we still think we're terracotta, we get very angry at the people that think it's all gold. Well, who are you to think that well of yourself? Right? That's what we do with celebrities. Look for a way to bring them down. Down where? Down where I am. Help them find their place. Where's your place? I don't know, beneath me. Right? How many in our culture are we trying to uplift? If you're not trying to uplift the people around you, you're living a lie. Because you can't uplift someone too high, because we are all divine beings. My self-worth equals my net worth? I don't think so. And until I understand what my self-worth should be and how to cultivate it, my net worth will be low. Even if my net worth is high, I won't appreciate it. You know, there are a lot of people trapped by money. You can use money to imprison yourself. And then instead of an enabling energy or a facilitating energy, it becomes a prison wall because of the consciousness. Nelson Mandela said, "Your playing small does not serve the world." Many of us play small financially. You know, well, in this economy, you're lucky to have a job. You know, in 2009, more millionaires were created in the United States than any other year in American history. In the middle of this economy, when it was worse than it is now. In the Depression, a lot of people became millionaires. Why? Because they saw opportunities and they didn't say, well, I can't do that. There's no money out there. There's never a shortage of money. When they run out of money, the government prints more. Most of the money that we know as money isn't money. It's bits on a computer. You think if you went into Goldman Sachs with billions and billions of assets that they'd have all the money in a vault somewhere? It's on a computer. It's not even real. It's an idea. And it's an idea that flows to where it's accepted. So someone that's very wealthy simply accepts that concept for themselves. That's all. It's consciousness. Wanting it isn't the same as expecting it, by the way. Big difference. Wayne Dyer says, abundance is not something we acquire, it's something we tune into. When you tune into the flow of abundance, it finds you. It's like tuning your radio in the car to a station. You know, you might be listening to some Poor Me cowboy song on the way to work, and you push another button, and all of a sudden you're on rock and roll. Well, the cowboy song's still there, and the rock and roll song was there before you tuned into it. They're all there. All the stations are there. And you're the tuner, and the tuner can only tune into one station. So if you look at the range of abundance from sheer poverty to magnificent wealth, they all exist within you. They're flowing through you and around you all the time, and you're setting your tuner, my guess would be, too low. Thinking, well, there's not there for me. There's not enough. It's a shortage, you know. We're in a recession, a depression, whatever, you know, and I turn on cable news and I'm lucky I've got a job. People making $15 million a year to tell me the economy's not good. Kind of interesting. The next thing is to refuse to engage in poor mouthing. Poor mouthing. You ever poor mouth? You ever been around people that poor mouth? So you change the subject or remove yourself. Set an intention now not to be around any poor mouthing. It may be a quiet week for you. You may feel like you're in isolation. What am I going to talk about? You know? How about talking about your dreams? Talk about your desires. Talk about what you'd like to see in your life. Talk about how you can build people up. Even if it's a monologue, it's better than being around listening to people that are putting everything down, that are telling you why something can't be. Don't go there to begin with. Well, you know, I want to go to lunch with everybody at work, and they talk about negative stuff, and they're not going to listen to me if I say be positive. Then make yourself someone they'll listen to. Outshout them. What makes you think you don't have influence? Of course you do. Most people are so incredibly insecure. That's prosperity calling. Most people are so incredibly insecure, and the more intimidating they sound, the more insecure they really are. And yet, many of us are afraid of them. So we sit there and we either don't say anything or we participate because we don't want to be left out. We can do better than that. Stand up for your consciousness. Stand up for what you want to believe in. See how that feels. If you're going to be rejected, it should be for the right reasons. You know, Joseph Campbell had a saying, he said, "My enemies make me proud." The people that don't like me, they don't like me for the right reasons. You know, some of us just want to be liked, we don't care by who. And that doesn't work. A guy named Jesus said, "For unto everyone that has shall be given, and they shall have abundance, but from everyone who has not shall be taken everything which they have." What does that mean? That just means it's consciousness. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer until their consciousness changes. You know, the idea that within a nation or within a community, you can take money away from the rich people and give it to the poor people, and that's going to do anything, is a joke. Because if the consciousness doesn't change, the rich will have the money back in a short order. But if you change the consciousness of the poor people, you don't have to take anything away from the rich people. Matter of fact, you don't want to. You want to encourage everyone to live to their potential. Our potential is not limited because some people just are unable to live up to their potential. You know, Ernest Holmes said, this society would be better off if we'd never created a charitable organization. He said, because none of them ever go out of business, do they? Why? Because they believe in the problem. And they convince their clients to believe in the problem. And they tell their clients they're victims. And their clients go, "Okay, I'm a victim. What are you going to do when you're a victim? You're going to be a victim." It's not to say you don't help people when they need a hand. But one thing we've done in our culture is we have created a subculture of need where people will refuse to believe they can do anything about it. We have sixth generation welfare families. Not to say they don't need, but by the time you get to the sixth generation, what do you think the conversation is around the table? What do you think the kids are taught about what to expect? So, for everyone that has been given, they'll get more. For everyone that has nothing, that has very little, even that will be taken away. That's consciousness. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't artificially change it. The third thing we want to do is get things into circulation. Clean out your mental and physical attics. Okay, you got junk in your house, get rid of it. If it's not in flow, it's not doing you any good. If it's something, if it's not something that you enjoy the beauty of, that you really can sit and admire because it's part of clutter, then it's that's an indication of a cluttered consciousness. Do you have a consciousness of clutter? Do you have a consciousness of, I remember one time in Fort Lauderdale, somebody suggested to raise money, we should have a rummage sale, and Dr. Bill said, "I don't have a rummage mentality." So we went out and we found designers in the designer area of Miami, and we had them bring up stuff from their designer studios that were end lots and things, and we had a designer show, and people lined up around the block to get in. We made $60,000 doing that one weekend. You see? People say, "Well, yeah, it's too expensive. Nobody will come." No. The most expensive seats in the theater sell out first. You see? If I'm in a consciousness of lack, I can't perceive how that would be. But you go down to Hollywood Bowl and try to get a good seat for anything. Go to the Pantages Theater and try to get a good seat for the Book of Mormon that's opening this fall. You can get an orchestra seat now from a scalper. They're $950. And they'll sell out. You say, how is that possible? Because people that have know that they can have more. That's how it's possible. Go through the garage. You have a junk drawer? Closets, the car. Some of your cars are like rolling museums of fast food detritus. Okay, might be a good idea to clean those out. If you haven't used it in a year, it isn't yours anymore. Give it away. You make room. When you make room for something new can show up. Some of us, the hoarder, you've maybe watched the show Hoarders, which is another way of exploiting people with a disorder. It's entertaining. But what does a hoarder think? A hoarder thinks, I better not get rid of that. I might need it. That's a consciousness of lack. That if I don't keep this piece of little receipt, that I'll be incomplete. So they hoard and they hoard and they hoard and they hoard. And there's nothing to appreciate. See? Nothing to be proud of. You surround yourself by stuff that is refuse. Because that's the consciousness on the inside. As within, so without. There's no other way it can be seen. Make room for the new things to come into your life. If your house is full, where's the new stuff going to come from? Oh, we got a storage shed. Remember one time there was a fire in a storage locker in Miami, one of those self-store places, and we had to go into 700 units. And I was on the police department. We were going through because and the fire department was there because hazardous material. You wouldn't believe the crap in there. People are paying $110 a month to store garbage. Well, I might need it. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. There's a concept of a river of money versus a barrel of money. A lot of people say, I'd like to have a big pot of money. Again, the idea of a river is something that keeps moving. A river of money is endless. It keeps flowing through. It comes and it goes. A barrel of money is something finite, no matter how big the barrel is. So do you see money as something flowing, or do you see money as something static? And that'll have an effect on how you treat it. One of our great teachers, Dr. Frank Richelieu, said, I came equipped to demonstrate, not to beg. Demonstrate means the demonstration is the positive response of a consciousness. He would say, a lot of you are waiting for your ship to come in. Your ship is in. It needs unloading. The next thing we do is act as if. Now this is interesting. This has to be a balance. I always recommend if you have money issues, carry a $100 bill with you. Okay, don't spend it unless you need to. Unless you really, I have one. I carry, and I carry it just as a symbol of abundance. When I look in my wallet, when I look in my pocket, and I open my money, there's always 100 there. And I just carry that because why not? I did a prosperity class one time years ago, and the assignment one week was to bring a $100 bill to class. And there were about 15 people in the class that raised their hand and said, I couldn't gather $100 together in one place this week. I said, okay, no problem. Everybody else, take out your $100, and I had them look at it, and we looked at some of the symbology on it and things, and all that stuff. It's really interesting when you look at money. And I said, now hold it up in front of you, and hold it up like this, and tear it in half. And about 3 people tore it, and the rest were like, I can't tear it. I said, why not? It's just a piece of paper. I have a roll of tape right here. Put it back together. And there were people that, even with that, could not tear it. I said, now, where's the power? Is that your money, or or is that money governing you? And could you have torn on $1 bill? Oh, sure. $10 bill? Yeah, probably. $20 bill? Well, I'm not sure. See, where's your limit? Where's your limit? Well, that's real money. Yeah, it is. And it's yours to the degree you take ownership of it. Kind of an interesting process, isn't it? I recommend you shop at better stores than you do, just to try it out. You don't have to buy a lot of stuff. Buy something. Okay, if you're a Walmart kind of person right now, that's your primary place, go to Macy's. If you're at Macy's, go down the valley, go to Neiman Marcus or Bloomingdale's or one of those, and buy some towels or something. Just try it. You should feel comfortable wherever you go. It's about, why don't I feel comfortable here? And if you're a person of unlimited funds, I want you to go to Walmart and buy something, because you should feel comfortable there. But there's usually more of an issue upscaling. When you go on vacation, where do you stay? Is it the cheapest place? Or is it something maybe in the middle? Or is it something really nice? Or what do you do, and how do you look at it? Prosperity says, what do I want? Poverty says, what can I afford? So there's going to be a balance in that. I'm not going to say everybody's going to be at what do I want all the time. But if I'm always at what can I afford, I'm probably not having a lot of joy out of my money. We have to just get necessities. Okay. But what about some extra stuff? What about some enjoyment? What about some fun? What about giving and stuff like that? Get rid of the goodwill mentality. If you're shopping at Goodwill, maybe your next stop is Walmart. There's nothing wrong with any of this. I'm just talking about getting a sense of where your consciousness is. Are you there by choice, or are you there because that's as far as you can see yourself? You may have heard a story of Mike Todd. He was one of Elizabeth Taylor's husbands, one of the lesser known ones, I think. And Mike Todd was in the entertainment business. He was a businessman. And there's a great story of him. This was not when he was married to Elizabeth Taylor, but he threw a big party at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York for business people to try to get leads and things, and he spent like $30,000, and this was back in the early 50s, so that was a lot of money. I know all of you throw $30,000 parties today like it's nothing. Okay, so it came time to pay the bill, and he didn't have the money. So literally, he was backstage in a tuxedo shirt with his sleeves rolled up washing dishes. And somebody comes back and says, "Mike, how does it feel to be poor?" He says, "I'm not poor, I'm broke." He says, "I've been broke plenty of times. I've never been poor." See, he knew he'd have money again. Temporary condition. The consciousness of expectation was, they say, I don't know if this is still true because the financial pictures have changed somewhat, but as of about 10 years ago, the average millionaire in the United States had been bankrupt twice. So how do you become a millionaire? You're not afraid to go bankrupt. See? And the average millionaire in the U.S. owned a pest control company in Iowa. It's a small business owner in some nondescript field. So we often think a millionaire, well, it's like Richard Branson or somebody like that, out living an adventurous life. No, most of them are the guys that employ the guy that comes and sprays bugs in your house. And most of them have been bankrupt twice. Next, we give. This is the last thing. There is a direct relationship between your consciousness of giving and your consciousness of receiving. In the Bible, it says, "As you give, so shall you receive." It does not say, "As you receive, so shall you give." People say, "Well, I'll give when I have something to give." Doesn't work that way. You'll never have something to give if you're going to wait. You develop a giving consciousness, and a giving consciousness creates an expectation of good. It's a causative energy. If through the act of giving I feel that I have lost something, then I get no benefit from the giving. To be giving has to be free. In other words, you give something and you're unattached to what the person does with it. They can throw it away, they can regift it, and you're okay with it. You ever give a gift and we're attached? You go over to the house and it better be there? I put a lot of thought into that, and you better appreciate it. Well, I think it's a piece of crap. I don't really appreciate it at all. I'll never give a gift again. Right? Some of us do that with the relationships. You meet somebody that isn't appreciative of all the love you have to give, and you decide, that's it. No more men for me, no more women for me, no more men or women for me. That's because you weren't giving your love, you were attached. So a gift freely given is the only true gift. In other words, no strings attached. You let go of it. It's gone. So that's the kind of giving that creates a prosperity consciousness. And tithing, I mentioned tithing only because what tithing is the practice of giving 10% to where you get your spiritual nourishment. Okay? Tithing is effective because of two things. One, you can measure it. Okay? Two, it's coercive. If you're tithing, it's because you're making yourself do it. And you're making yourself, what you learn when you make yourself give 10% is that you can live without it. That's what you learn. And then, after a while, you may say, you may actually not be tithing anymore, even though you're still giving 10%, because then it's freely given. Tithing is a way to learn to give freely. I still say I tithe. I don't tithe anymore. I give. And it's more than 10%. Matter of fact, what I encourage my daughters to do is two things. Number one, tithe. Number two, take the next 10% and put it in savings. Live off 80. Not savings, investments. Savings are nothing anymore. I live off 80. Well, that's because you're living off 120 now. That's the problem. Start with tithing. And what you do is you bring yourself into a consciousness of, I have enough, I am enough. And this doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. You didn't get the way you are overnight, right? I mean, you're not if you're having money problems, it's not because you were struck by lightning on Wednesday, right? It's been a process. Wayne Dyer says, the measure of your life will not be in what you accumulate, but what you give away. That idea of giving is very important. And Ernest says, when consciousness is changed, experience automatically changes. Most of us get this backward. We wait for experience to be different so we can feel differently about it. But it begins within and comes without. So I need to change my consciousness, up-level it, so that I'm able to live a life of spiritual freedom, which means I'm at choice. In every area of my life, I want to be at choice. You want to do this or not? Sure or no. As opposed to, wait a minute, let me get the checkbook out and see what's going on. Okay? That's it. Thank you, and namaste.